You want to know about pride? Let me tell you about pride. My name is Krent Val Mortis, third-ranked blade champion of the Valorian Imperium, survivor of the Kelthros campaigns, bearer of 7 combat citations, and, oh, this is the part that still makes my scales itch with shame, the warrior who begged a human for help. Yes, a human, but I am getting ahead of myself, aren't I? Let me back up. Let me tell you how a decorated soldier of the mightiest empire in 4 galaxies ended up crying like a hatchling in front of one of the galaxy's most laughable species. It started on Epsilon 7, which was, and I am being generous here, an absolute pit of a mining colony. The whole miserable rock was barely worth the fuel we spent getting there. Gray dust everywhere, toxic atmosphere, temperatures that swung from boiling to freezing every 16 hours. The mining installations looked like they had been assembled by drunken mechanics using spare parts from 12 different manufacturers, which, knowing humans, they probably had. The intelligence report said the facility was being used as a staging ground by the Krexith Rebellion. Bunch of radical extremists who thought they could overthrow the Imperium with stolen weapons and sheer audacity. Idiots, basically. My squad, the Crimson Talons, finest rapid assault unit in the fleet, had wiped out 17 Krexith cells in the past rotation cycle alone. This was supposed to be number 18. Easy work. In and out. Secure the facility, eliminate hostiles, collect whatever intelligence we could find, then get back to the ship for evening meal. Commander Thresh had even joked about it during the briefing, said we would be done before the humans' lunch break ended. We should have known better. We really should have known better. The drop went fine. Our insertion pods punched through the atmosphere like molten daggers, barely rattling despite the turbulence. I remember the satisfaction I felt watching my tactical display light up with green indicators, as all 12 pods landed in formation around the primary mining complex. Textbook execution. My heart swelled with pride. The mining complex itself was a maze of prefabricated corridors, storage modules and processing chambers, all connected by a network of tunnels that burrowed deep into the asteroid's crust. Lighting was terrible. Humans apparently prefer to work in near darkness, like cave-dwelling primitives. The air recyclers wheezed and coughed, struggling to process the atmosphere. Everything smelled like metal shavings, engine coolant, and unwashed bodies. We split into 3 teams. I led Team Razor, 5 of our best, through the Eastern Corridor complex. The plan was simple: sweep and clear, standard suppression protocols, neutralize any resistance. We moved like shadows, weapons ready, every sense heightened. That is when everything went sideways. Spectacularly, catastrophically sideways. The explosion came from below us. Not ahead, not behind, below. The Krexith had rigged the entire sub-level with mining charges, the big ones used for cracking open mineral veins. The floor simply ceased to exist. One moment I was signaling my team forward, the next I was falling through a cloud of smoke and debris, tumbling end over end with half a ton of shattered flooring. I hit hard. Something in my left leg made a sound like snapping wood, and pain, white-hot, stunning, overwhelming, shot through my entire body. My armor's trauma systems immediately flooded my bloodstream with suppressants, but it was not enough. I could feel bone grinding against bone, could see the unnatural angle of my shin through the cracked plating. Through the smoke and chaos I heard weapons fire. Plasma bolts, kinetic rounds, the distinctive whine of Krexith energy weapons. My team was engaged above me, but I could not reach them, could not even stand. My communicator screeched with static, damaged in the fall. Team Razor requesting extraction. I managed to gasp into my helmet mic. Officer down. Multiple fractures. Coordinates transmitting. Commander Thresh's voice crackled back, broken and distant. Negative, Krenth. Facility is rigged to blow. Multiple detonations detected. Full retreat authorized. Get to the rally point or get left behind. I cannot walk, Commander. I need... Another explosion, closer this time, cut off my transmission. The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in a sickly red glow. Somewhere above me I heard the thunder of armored boots retreating. My squad, my brothers in arms, running, leaving me. I tried to crawl. Made it perhaps 3 meters before the pain became too much, and I collapsed against a support pillar, gasping. My medical readouts were screaming at me. Compound fracture, internal bleeding. Possible spinal damage. Without immediate medical intervention, I had maybe 2 hours before shock and blood loss finished what the explosion started. That is when I heard the footsteps. Soft, cautious, coming from the darkness ahead. Not Valorian, not Krexith. Human. The human emerged from the smoke like some kind of scrawny ghost, wearing a maintenance jumpsuit covered in grease stains and what I desperately hoped was only rust. He was carrying a toolbox in one hand and emergency medical kit in the other, and he looked absolutely, completely, thoroughly unimpressed with the situation. "Well," he said, surveying the carnage with the casual air of someone commenting on the weather, "this is just fantastic. Really top-notch military operation you folks are running here." I stared at him. Through the pain, through the shock, through the haze of combat stimulants flooding my system, I could only stare. A human, a maintenance worker, judging by the patches on his jumpsuit, maybe 50 standard years old, with gray streaking through his hair and the kind of weathered face that came from spending too much time in recycled air. "Stay back," I managed to snarl, reaching for my sidearm. My hand closed on empty air. The weapon was gone, lost somewhere in the fall. "I am Valorian military. I do not require assistance from your kind." "Oh, sure," the human said, completely ignoring my warning and kneeling beside me. "You are doing great on your own. Really selling the whole independent warrior thing with the bone sticking out of your leg there. Very convincing." I said, "Stay back." "Yeah, I heard you the first time, buddy." He was already opening the medical kit, pulling out supplies with practiced efficiency. "Name's Marcus Webb, maintenance chief, or at least I was before you military geniuses decided to turn my workplace into a war zone. Now hold still, because I am going to have to set this leg and it is going to hurt like hell." The indignity of it burned worse than my injuries. A human, offering to help me. The sheer wrongness of the situation made my head spin. Humans were weak, fragile, short-lived. They had no honor, no warrior tradition worth mentioning. They were mechanics and merchants, builders and bureaucrats. They did not belong on battlefields, and they certainly did not get to play medic to Valorian elite forces. I had seen humans before. Of course. Everyone had. They were everywhere in the galaxy these days, spreading like some kind of persistent fungus. They ran cargo haulers, operated mining stations, managed trade outposts. Useful enough for menial labor, I supposed, but hardly worthy of respect. Commander Thresh used to joke that humans were what happened when evolution gave up halfway through and decided to call it good enough. I had laughed at that joke. We all had. "I will wait for my own people," I said through gritted teeth. "They will return for me." Marcus paused in his preparations and looked at me with an expression I could not quite read. Pity? Amusement? Something worse? "Kid," he said, and the gentleness in his voice somehow made it worse. "I watched your friends pile into those drop pods 3 minutes ago. They are already back in orbit. You got left behind." The words hit harder than the explosion had. Left behind. Abandoned. The Crimson Talons did not abandon their own. We were brothers, bound by honor and blood. Another explosion rocked the facility much closer than before. Dust and debris rained from the ceiling. Somewhere in the distance I heard the groan of stressed metal, the hiss of escaping atmosphere. "Right," Marcus said, his tone shifting to something more urgent. "Philosophy and feelings time is over. This whole place is coming down around our ears, and I would really prefer not to die today. So here is what is going to happen. I am going to stabilize that leg enough for you to move. You are going to swallow whatever pride you have left, and we are both going to get the hell out of here." Question? I do not need. That was rhetorical. He was already working, hands moving with surprising speed and confidence. "Brace yourself. 3, 2. He did not get to 1. He just grabbed my leg and yanked, setting the bone with a brutal efficiency that made me see stars. The scream that tore from my throat was not dignified. Not dignified at all. "Sorry," Marcus said, though he did not sound particularly sorry. "I find that counting down just makes people tense up. Better to just rip the bandage off, you know." He was wrapping my leg now using some kind of quick-setting polymer cast from the medical kit. "This will hold for maybe an hour if you are gentle with it, which you will not be, because again, exploding facility. So let's call it 30 minutes before your leg turns into chunky soup again." The facility shuddered. The emergency lighting flickered. From somewhere above us came the unmistakable sound of structural collapse. Tons of metal and stone giving way, tumbling into the lower levels. Marcus pulled me upright with surprising strength for someone so slight. Come on, big guy. Lean on me. We have got a very narrow window to not become part of the rubble, and I really do not want to explain to my union rep why I got pancaked on my day off. This is your day off? I asked, dazed. Yeah, Marcus said, already half dragging, half carrying me toward a side corridor. I just came in to grab my spare calibrator from my locker. Should have slept in. Story of my life, really. The ceiling began to cave in behind us. Marcus dragged me through the collapsing facility like I weighed nothing, which was absurd because I outmassed him by at least 60 kilograms. The human was stronger than he looked, or perhaps more accurately, more stubborn than physics allowed. Every few meters he would mutter something under his breath, curses mostly, occasionally interrupted by observations like, "Oh great, the support beams are melting now, that is just perfect," or "Who designed this place? Drunk engineers or actual children?" The tunnels were a nightmare, smoke everywhere, thick and choking. Sparks rained from severed power conduits. The floor buckled and heaved like a living thing. Behind us, I could hear the steady progression of destruction, each explosion closer than the last, a countdown to our annihilation. Left here, Marcus gasped, hauling me around a corner just as the corridor we had been in folded in on itself with a sound like breaking bones. Service tunnel. Not on any official maps because, well, building codes are more like building suggestions when you are this far from civilization. You are insane, I managed between ragged breaths. The pain suppressants were wearing off. Every step sent fresh agony lancing through my leg. Buddy, I work maintenance on a mining colony at the edge of explored space. Insanity came with the job description. He stopped at what looked like a solid wall, ran his hands along it, found something I could not see, and pushed. A hidden panel swung open, revealing a narrow shaft leading downward. After you, that goes down, we need to go up, to the surface. Yeah, you see, that is what someone with military training would think. Very logical. Very by the book. Marcus was already lowering himself into the shaft. Problem is, all the direct routes up are currently on fire or crushed or both. This maintenance shaft connects to the geothermal plant sublevel, which connects to the emergency evacuation tube which goes straight to the surface. Longer path? Sure, but also the not dead path. So I am calling it a win. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed at me not to go deeper into this death trap. But another explosion near enough to feel the heat wash over my scales made the decision for me. I lowered myself after him, biting back screams as my injured leg protested. The shaft was tight, clearly designed for humans, not Valorians. I had to practically fold myself in half to fit. Marcus descended below me with the ease of long practice, moving hand over hand down the ladder rungs. "So," he said conversationally as if we were not fleeing for our lives through a collapsing mine, "what made you folks decide to blow up my workplace today? Was it something we said? Did someone leave a bad review on the Galactic Network? This was a Krexith operation." I growled. "Military target." "Uh-huh. And the 47 civilian workers who were here? The ones who barely evacuated before you stormtroopers showed up? What were they? Acceptable losses?" The words stung worse than they should have. "We gave proper warning. Standard evacuation protocols were—" 20 minutes, Marcus interrupted. "You gave us 20 minutes to clear a facility that takes 30 minutes to evacuate on a good day. Real thoughtful." I had no answer for that. Had not thought about it, honestly. Civilians were not my concern. My mission had been clear. Neutralize the Krexith threat. Everything else was secondary. We dropped into the geothermal sublevel and the temperature immediately spiked. The air shimmered with heat. Massive turbines spun in their housings, converting thermal energy from the asteroid's core into power. At least, they had. Now half of them were silent, and the others screamed like dying animals, their bearings dry, their systems failing. Marcus consulted a panel on the wall, cursed, then kicked it. The display flickered to life. "Okay, good news and bad news. Good news, the evacuation tube is still intact. Bad news, the path to it goes right through the primary coolant exchange, which according to these readings is currently at about 400 degrees and rising. We will cook." "Yeah, that is a possibility." He was rummaging through his toolbox now, pulling out items and discarding them. "Unless we can vent some of that heat before we cross, there should be an emergency release valve somewhere around here." He found it buried under a pile of debris. Together, straining against the weight, we We cleared enough space for Marcus to access the controls. He worked quickly, his hands steady despite the chaos. I found myself watching him, this fragile human with his grease-stained jumpsuit and his sarcastic commentary, and feeling something I had not expected. Respect. There, Marcus said as the valve hissed open. Superheated steam vented through overhead ducts, the temperature in the chamber dropping almost immediately. See? Easy. Now we just have to cross about 50 meters of very angry metal without touching anything that will instantly char us into ash. Ready? You do this often. What? Escape from collapsing facilities with injured alien soldiers. First time, actually. I usually just fix broken air filters and unclogged toilets. This is way outside my pay grade. We made the crossing in tense silence, Marcus calling out warnings about hotspots, guiding me around buckled floor plates and dripping coolant. Twice more the facility shook with explosions. Once a support beam crashed down so close I felt it brush my shoulder plates. Why are you doing this? I asked when we finally reached the evacuation tube access. Why risk yourself for me? Your people and mine are not allies, barely even trade partners. Marcus looked at me then, really looked at me, and his expression was unreadable. You know what the difference is between you and me, Krent, he said quietly. You see species, Valorian, human, Krexith, whatever. I just see people, and I do not leave people behind to die. Not if I can help it. The evacuation tube gaped before us, a vertical shaft leading to salvation. Or so we thought. The evacuation tube was compromised. We discovered this the moment Marcus pried open the access hatch and we both stared into a shaft half filled with collapsed debris and twisted metal. The ladder was gone, sheared away by some catastrophic failure. The walls were scorched black. And worst of all, from somewhere far above I could hear the distinct hiss of escaping atmosphere. Well, Marcus said after a long moment, that is not ideal. Not ideal? I stared at him. That is our only way out. Our only conventional way out. Sure. He was already moving, heading back toward the geothermal chamber. But I did not spend 8 years keeping this rust bucket operational without learning every single unconventional exit this place has. Come on. I grabbed his shoulder, spinning him around with more force than I intended. You knew the evacuation tube was damaged. Marcus met my gaze without flinching. Yeah, I knew. Then why? Because the alternate route requires going back through Sector 9. And Sector 9 has a bunch of very angry Krexith fighters who did not evacuate when their bomb plot went sideways. They are trapped down here same as us, and they have guns, and they are really motivated to shoot anything that moves. He paused. I was hoping maybe the tube would be usable after all. Guess I was wrong. The pieces fell into place. The medical kit. The toolbox. The fact that he had appeared in that corridor at all. You were not grabbing a calibrator from your locker, I said slowly. You came back. After the evacuation, you came back into a combat zone. Yeah. Well, Marcus would not look at me. Someone tripped the man down alarm from Sector 7. That is you, by the way. Your fancy armor has a distress beacon that broadcasts on civilian emergency channels. I heard it, and I thought, maybe someone needs help. You risked your life for a distress signal. For someone you did not even know. Listen. I spent 6 months in a Krexith labor camp 3 years ago, Marcus said quietly. After they raided the station I was working on, nobody came for us. Not the Imperium, not the Coalition, not anyone who could have made a difference. 40 workers locked in cages waiting to be ransomed or sold or just left to rot. His jaw tightened. 19 of us made it out alive. The rest died waiting for rescue that never came. So yeah, when I hear a distress beacon I answer. Every single time, because maybe I cannot fix what happened to my crew. But I can damn well make sure someone else does not die alone in the dark. I had no words. None of my training, none of my experience had prepared me for this. For a human who ran toward danger instead of away from it. For someone who saw past species in uniforms and politics to the simple fact of suffering. I am sorry, I managed. For your crew. For what happened to you. Save it for later, Marcus said, his tone shifting back to business. Right now we need to figure out how to get through Sector 9 without becoming target practice. That is when the first plasma bolt screamed past my head. 3 Krexith fighters emerged from the shadows, their weapons already firing. Marcus yanked me down behind a turbine housing as energy blasts scorched the metal above us. The Krexith were shouting, their translator chips rendering their words into guttural demands to surrender. "Great," Marcus yelled over the weapons fire. "Just fantastic. Any chance your military training includes a plan for this?" My sidearm was gone. My leg was broken. I was operating on maybe 30% combat effectiveness, but I was still Valorian. Still a warrior of the Imperium. "Can you vent the coolant tanks?" I shouted back. Marcus's eyes went wide. "That would flood this entire chamber with superheated steam. We would cook. Not if we seal ourselves in the equipment alcove first. It has emergency shielding, yeah? Yeah, but do it. Now." To his credit, Marcus did not argue further. He bolted for the control panel while I did my best to draw the HFY roaring challenges in their direction, making myself the obvious target. My broken leg screamed in protest, but I ignored it. Pain was temporary. Death was permanent. Marcus reached the controls. His fingers flew across the interface. The Krexith noticed what he was doing, shifted their aim toward him. I threw myself forward using my body as a shield, felt 2 plasma bolts hit my armor, felt the ceramic plating crack and buckle. But I covered the distance, tackled Marcus into the alcove just as he slammed his fist down on the emergency release. The coolant tanks ruptured with a sound like the birth of stars. Superheated steam exploded through the chamber. The Krexith did not even have time to scream. The alcove shielding held. Barely. Marcus and I huddled in that tiny space, the temperature climbing to barely survivable levels, waiting for the steam to dissipate. "You just saved my life," Marcus said, his voice hoarse. "You saved mine first," I replied. "I was simply returning the favor." "Yeah, well," he managed a weak smile. "Guess we are even now." "No," I said. "We are brothers." The rescue teams found us 6 hours later, half dead from heat exhaustion and barely conscious. Marcus had used the alcove's emergency beacon, the one piece of equipment that still functioned after our impromptu steam bath. I remember very little of the extraction, just fragments. The blessed coolness of the medical bay, the concerned faces of human medics hovering over us, the sensation of being lifted onto a transport stretcher. When I woke 3 days later in the medical frigate orbiting Epsilon 7, my leg was encased in a regeneration sleeve and Commander Thresh was standing beside my bed. "Welcome back, Krent," he said, but there was something off in his tone. Something cold. "Commander, I can explain." "You were recovered with a human civilian," Thresh interrupted. "A human who claims he rescued you from the facility, who claims you would have died without his intervention." The way he said it made it clear what he thought of such claims. Made it clear what my brothers in arms thought of me now. A warrior who needed saving. By a human. "It is true," I said, meeting his gaze. "Marcus Webb saved my life, and I intend to make sure that fact goes into my official report. Into every report. I will testify before High Command if necessary." Thresh's expression darkened. "Think carefully, Krent. Such testimony would be embarrassing for the Crimson Talons. For the Imperium itself. Perhaps it would be better to simply note that you survived against difficult odds and leave it at that." "No," I said. "It would not be better. It would be a lie." I did testify. Stood before the assembled generals and admirals of the Valorian High Command and told them everything. Every detail of my rescue. Every moment of Marcus's courage and resourcefulness. The way he had run into danger when my own squad had run away from it. They hated it. I could see it in their faces, the way their scales darkened with displeasure. But they could not refute the facts. Could not deny the recordings from my armor's black box which had survived intact. Could not explain away the simple truth that a human maintenance worker had succeeded where Valorian elite forces had failed. The story spread, first through military channels, then beyond. Humans loved it, naturally. Proof that their species was more than the galaxy gave them credit for. But it spread through Valorian circles too, whispered in training halls and officers' clubs. The tale of Krent and Marcus. The warrior and the mechanic. Some called it inspiring. Others called it shameful. I called it the truth. They reassigned me after my recovery. Not a demotion technically, but not an honor either. Training command, far from the front lines. Teaching fresh recruits about tactics and honor, and the importance of never leaving fallen comrades behind. I told them Marcus's story in every lecture. Made sure they understood. 6 months after Epsilon 7, Marcus came to visit me at the training facility. He looked the same, still wearing that grease-stained jumpsuit, still carrying that battered toolbox. But something was different in the way the younger warriors looked at him. Respect. curiosity, even admiration. We walked the facility grounds together, this unlikely pair, and talked about everything and nothing. I heard you got promoted, I said. Safety director for the entire mining guild. Quite an achievement. Yeah, well, turns out nearly dying in a collapsing facility looks great on a resume. He grinned. Plus, I have been making some noise about proper evacuation protocols and giving workers more than 20 minutes warning before military operations. The guild is backing me up. Things are changing, Krent. Slowly, but they are changing. Good, I said. That is good. We reached the edge of the training grounds, looking out over the landing pads where transport ships came and went. You know what I learned from all this? Marcus asked. Humanity is not about being the strongest or the fastest or the most advanced. It is about showing up. It is about doing the right thing even when it is hard, even when it is dangerous, even when nobody would blame you for walking away. I've thought about that, about Marcus running back into a war zone for a distress signal, about him dragging a wounded enemy soldier through collapsing tunnels, about choosing compassion over safety, kindness over self-preservation. That is not just humanity, I said quietly. That is heroism. Real heroism. Marcus shrugged. Maybe, or maybe I am just too stubborn to know when to quit. We stood there in comfortable silence. Two survivors bound by fire and desperation and the simple choice to not let someone die alone. And I realized something that would have horrified the Krent who had arrived on Epsilon 7 all those months ago. I had learned more about honor from this human than from a lifetime in the Valorian military. The galaxy was changing. Humans were making sure of it, and maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what the galaxy needed.